I welcome you to this session of ISO 9001 2015, and today we are going to talk about clause number 7.4. So as usual, first of all, I will read out the requirement to you as given in the standard. Clause 7.4, communication. The organization shall determine the internal and external communication relevant to the quality management system, including A, B, C, D, E. There are 5 points in this. A, on what it will communicate. B, when to communicate. C, with whom to communicate. D, how to communicate. And E, who communicates. So this is a small clause and we are now going to discuss it in more detail. Well, as the title of the clause says, it is regarding the communication. Communication means communicating our requirement or communicating anything to a person or persons who are within the organization or outside the organization. So the organization shall determine the internal and external communication. So communications are divided into two parts. One is internal, that means within the organization, and external means with the outside agencies, like legal agencies are there, regulatory agencies, service providers, product providers, raw material providers, and so many things. So the organization shall determine internal and external communication relevant to the quality management system. It has got to be relating to the quality management system, to the requirements of the quality management system that we have put in place in compliance to this international standard and in compliance to what we need to carry out within the organization. So on what it will communicate? The very first thing is what we are supposed to communicate. Well, there are so many things to be communicated, like the quality policy of the organization has got to be communicated. The customer requirements have got to be communicated, and the procedures and methods, they need to be communicated within the organization to the people who are going to operate on these products and services, which will ultimately go to the customer. So on what it will communicate, on what the organization will communicate, this has to be identified. And it has got to be put in black and white so that we don't confuse about it. We are very clear on what to communicate. And B is when to communicate. When are we going to communicate? Naturally, when it is internal communication, we are going to do it prior to launching any product. So before the product is launched, the people should be aware about how the processes have to be carried out and what processes have to be done in what according to what kind of methodology or what kind of process has got to be adopted. And when to communicate. So this B is when to communicate. At what point of time we are supposed to communicate with the people. So as I told you, if we are launching a product or a service, it has to be done before we launch the service or the product, and we have to communicate internally with regard to how our people will carry out the processes. And then the inspection people, how they will carry out the inspection, the supervisors and others, how they will carry out the supervision, what points have to be kept in mind, and what is the quality plan that we are supposed to follow. So all these are the things which we are supposed to communicate within the duties and responsibilities of the people working within the organization. So this is what we are supposed to communicate within the organization. Now, with whom to communicate? With whom to communicate? Again, the internal and external communication can identify people with whom communication is to be held. So internal communication, as I told you, we have to communicate with the people who are going to operate the processes and produce the products which will go to the customer. We have to talk to the materials team as to what materials is needed by our operators. And so likewise, there could be many points where we have to communicate, when we have to communicate. So when we have to communicate comes, first is prior to supply of products and services. Before we plan out, and we have to plan the things and plan the various aspects related to products and services to be launched, and communicate with the people who are supposed to carry out the operations within the organization and provide training to them. So we have to talk to the trainers, what kind of training is to be provided. We have to talk to the purchasing people, what kind of material is required. So when to communicate is prior to launching of the product, we have to communicate. And once again, when the product is ready, then we are again supposed to communicate with the people who are concerned with packaging and loading of the products, dispatch of the products, and our team who is looking after all these activities, and the inspection people, so that all inspected and good material only is released for the customer to be dispatched. Now, with whom to communicate? With whom to communicate is quite simple. We have to communicate with the people who are producing the products and services. Then we are supposed to communicate with the people who are going to release the products and services after inspection, because the product and services have to go only when meeting the specified requirement of the standard, specified requirements as specified by the customer, as given in the order, and meeting the requirement of this international standard and meeting the requirement of our quality management system. So with whom to communicate, we have to identify these people, and as I told you, the very first person is the person who is producing these products, then the person who is inspecting these products, packaging these products, and finally our team which is arranging to dispatch, handling the customer orders. So these are the people with whom we are supposed to communicate. And how to communicate? Well, how to communicate will depend on with whom we are communicating. If we are communicating with outside agencies, we have to communicate in a manner so that our communication is clear to them as to what we are going to supply, when we are going to supply, in what manner the product will reach them, and what they are supposed to do on receipt of the products, and how they will handle the product, how they will communicate with us in case it is necessary further on, and things like that. So how to communicate will depend on what is to be communicated. So normally it's not a complicated issue, and we are able to always see how to communicate. And who communicates? People have got to be specified. People have got to be authorized who can communicate. It's not that anybody or everybody can communicate. There are people who authorized in the commercial department or the department which is communicating with the customers. So customer communication will depend on that. So who communicates with the customer? The people who are dealing with the customers, those who are in touch with the customers. Normally the our CRM team, customer relationship management team, or the commercial team, or the people who are dealing with the customers on behalf of our organization. So these are the people who will communicate with the customers, and then in case there is any problem with regard to the passing on of the product, or with regard to inspection of the product, then we are going to talk to our inspection people as to what was wrong with the product and to what extent it was wrong, what is the things that we have allowed within the product to be considered as fit, although the product may not be 100% fit, but the inspection department may say that these deficiencies are very, very minor and they are not going to come in the way of operation of the product, and therefore we can consider to. So they will take the sanction of the appropriate authority and allow the product to go to the customer. And if still the customer finds it necessary, the customer can return the product and he can communicate with our production team or the supplier team. Then with regard to the legal requirements, our legal team is supposed to communicate with the legal authorities, and our purchasing team is supposed to communicate with the suppliers who are going to supply us products and services, and like that. So who communicates will depend on what is going to be communicated. So it will become amply clear, and we can always pinpoint as to who is the appropriate agency to handle that kind of communication. So I don't think there is any problem in identification of this kind of agency. So I hope you have understood the requirement of this this clause. It's a simple clause and a small clause, not a very big one. And if any case, if there is anything which is not clear to you, please put your comment below this video and I'll try to explain to you more about it, so that nothing remains unclear to you. And please, if you are liking my videos, please give me a thumbs up, give me a like, and also subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon, and do not forget to share my videos with your colleagues who are dealing in ISO, so that the benefit of our communication can also reach them and they can also take advantage of it. So thank you very much for watching my videos, and we meet on Sunday next on clause number 7.5, documented information. Thank you and bye bye. See you.